Good Wednesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Plenty of Browns to talk about a little later in the show. We'll also talk about LeBron James broke Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record for most points in an NBA career last night. We will also take a look back at the beginning when LeBron James was not the chosen one, was not the king. He was just LeBron James. But we begin by talking Browns. Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. Tim, you recently wrote an article, why the Browns shouldn't expect to find that impact defensive tackle that they need in the draft this year.
Yeah, and it's something I've kind of talked about for a while, is that, defensive tackle, you could make a strong case for that being the biggest need on the team, but the big reason I said, they got attacking free agency is just it's so rare to find a defensive tackle who's going to come in and have an impact for you right away. And I actually look back the last 3 draft classes. Looking back at last year, for example, 32 rookie defensive tackles played at least one snap. This is all according to Pro Football Focus. Only 11 of those 20% played 20% of his team's snaps. And only 4 of those players, so we're talking 4 out of 32 total, 4 out of those 11, had a grade of 60 or better on Pro Football Focus. That's about starter level grade, and 2 of those guys were first round picks. Philadelphia's Jordan Davis and Green Bay's Devontae Wyatt. And so doing the math in there, what I turned the impact rate, which is a combination you take the total defensive tackles and you find the players that not only can have impact but can play a good amount of reps for you. That came out to about 12.5%. And then in 2021, it was even worse. It was 6.9%. 2020 bettered 14.7%. And yeah, you can obviously make cases about, you take Pro Football Focus grades with a grain of salt or whatever. Defensive tackle classes weren't necessarily great those last 3 years, but you compare it to, say, edge rusher, for example, last season, that impact rate I was talking about, 30.6%. So that means you had about a 3 in 10 chance of drafting an edge rusher last year who was a quality piece for you, at least rotationally. So I do look at this draft class at defensive tackle. There are some good players. There are some very good prospects. And I didn't write this to say that the Browns should not draft a defensive tackle in the second round. I certainly think it should be in the realm of possibility, because there are, like I said, there are some good ones like Michigan's Monty Smith, Siaki Ika from Baylor, Gervon Dexter from Florida, just to name a few. But if you're expecting the Browns fans shouldn't be expecting any of those guys necessarily to have a big impact right away. If you're drafting them in the second round, you're drafting them kind of for down the road because you think those players are going to be impact players to you in 2024 or 2025. And the Browns need help at defensive tackle in 2023.
Yep, they need impact players, and they probably need a couple of them. I understand you're intrigued by Winfrey and some of the younger guys. You need guys to come in that will immediately upgrade that position. Along those lines, let's take a look at some of the free agent defensive tackles, along with the Pro Football Focus estimate of the contract that they will likely get. So first one on the list, Javon Hargraves. He'll be playing in the Super Bowl for the Eagles this weekend. Projected contract, 3 years, $55 million, 36 guaranteed. Another guy that we've talked about quite a lot on this show is Draymond Jones from the Broncos. Projected contract, 4 years, $58 million, is an Ohio State product. Before that, he was a star at St. Ignatius High School. Defensive tackle, Ashawn Robinson. This is a bargain basement guy that could be effective for the Browns. 1 year, $2.5 million. If that's the contract for Ashawn Robinson, you got to give him a look, a run stopper, without question. Another guy that we've talked about quite a bit, Poona Ford. Projected contract, 2 years, $12.5 million, 7.5 guaranteed. You see down this year a little bit. It was Poona Ford for the Seahawks. They expect him to come back and bounce back. So the question is, Tim, any of those 4, do you like them at the prices that we mentioned?
They all sound very interesting, for different reasons. I mean, we talked about Ashawn Robinson. He's a solid defensive tackle, as far as run stopper. I am pretty high on Poona Ford, I will say that. I think his body type is so unique. He's sub 6 foot. We're talking 300-plus pounds. He's had plenty of great years, as a run defender, again, on PFF. Not quite as good this year as been in the past, but the ideal body type that I think, the Browns should be looking for that position. 300+ pounds, a guy who's just going to eat up blocks in the middle and create sort of problems for those guards and other linemen trying to get to the second level. Draymond Jones intrigues me because obviously, that he's a Cleveland guy. He's a St. Ignatius alum. Had some great moments at Ohio State, maybe a little smaller than you would like for a defensive tackle at about 280 pounds. But I look at him, if you bring him in, you're kind of putting him inside for interior pass rush situations and be willing to kick him outside, maybe in run situations. If you're bringing him in, I think you have to bring in a bigger body, when it comes to defensive tackle. And Javon Hargrave, he's easily the best of the bunch, but I have a hard time imagining, he leaves Philadelphia without a new contract, even if he doesn't get that kind of money. When you're playing on a Super Bowl team, when you're that kind of player who plays on a really good team, it's easy to just go ahead and take a little less money to stay where you are, stay in a winning situation. And there's no telling what any of these guys are going to do, whether Javon Hargrave is going to do that. But if he hits the mark in free agency, he's a guy if on the Browns, I'm going right after, because he's that stud defensive tackle who can really open things up and really, free up things in that run defense.
Yeah, and kind of the mindset that we had putting that together, I don't think they're going to spend $20 million on one guy, because they need more than one guy. You need to spread that over and let Jim Schwartz find what skill sets guys have. Okay, this guy doesn't get after the passer, but he can absorb double teams. He can play on first down, run situations. This guy can't absorb double teams, but he can get after it. He's going to play on second and long and third passing situations. So they need to do more of that, because there isn't the money to go out and spend $20 million on a couple of guys. All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, you guys. I just wanted to touch on something that I saw while I was looking for defensive linemen for the Cleveland Browns. What I found was Jose Ramirez from Eastern Michigan. This guy has moves like Myles Garrett. Look at the Shrine Bowl. With 3 minutes and 30 seconds left in the second half, you'll see him make a play. This is so Myles Garrett-esque, it's ridiculous. I would like to see the Browns pick this guy in the third round. He's projected as a third rounder. I'd like for the Browns to pick him, maybe see if they can put him on the other side and see what you get. This guy's good. So I'll be looking to see when you guys do this one, and I'd like to hear what you think of this guy. All right, thanks. Bye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Here is a look at the video that he was talking about from that play. He's spot shadowed on the left over there. So you do see a pretty quick get off. Turns the corner. That's a really nice play. I don't know a lot about Jose Ramirez. Not the Guardians' second baseman, third baseman, but the guy from Eastern Michigan. I will say this. MAC is an underrated football conference. There are always 5, 6, 7 guys from that conference that get drafted and usually make an impact. I don't know enough about Ramirez to have an opinion on. I liked what I saw in that clip.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about that clip, and I'm sure, if he was available and, he was available and the Browns go on the clock, I'm sure there'll be a lot of Cleveland fans that they see the name on, say, Mel Kiper's board on ESPN and be like, do it. But I look at Jose Ramirez and what he's done at Eastern Michigan. Some pretty good numbers: 12 sacks last season, 2 forced fumbles. Even the year before, solid production: 6.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. But I think what's going to hurt him from a Browns perspective, his birthday is May 3rd, 1999. May 9th, 1999, excuse me. And that means he's going to be 24 years old shortly after he gets drafted. And what we know about Andrew Berry more than anything else when it comes to drafting, he strays away from older players. I think it took until the 7th round of last year's draft for him to draft a player who's 23 years old. We don't know if that's going to continue. We don't know if he's going to continue to lean predominantly towards younger players now that, they're more of a win now period than maybe they were in the past couple seasons under Andrew Berry's leadership. But considering his history, it's just hard to envision him going for a player, that's already that old, because again, you got limited years of prime, and if say he earns a second contract, at the end of that second contract, there might not be much left because he'll be on the wrong side of 30 in that situation. So he's a promising player, but I just don't know if it seems like a fit for the Browns.
Yeah, and those are all things to keep in mind. And I think you're right. I think Andrew Berry will alter those guardrails of age slightly, because they got to win. If you have another 7-8 win season, there's no telling who's left the following year. The This is kind of interesting as well. NFL cap casualties that could happen. This is from the Bleacher Report, and this name is really interesting. Khalil Mack, edge rusher from the Chargers. While he returned to start all 17 contests past season, 8 sacks. Cash-strapped Chargers could move on if Mack isn't willing to rework his deal. It's conceivable Mack will want to land with a potential contender. 7-time Pro Bowl would fit well with teams like the Chiefs, Rams, and Browns, especially if he's willing to sign a more team-friendly deal than his current contract, set to make almost $23 million in 2023, $23.25 in 2024. So there's no way they're absorbing that contract. But that's an interesting guy. He would be very intriguing opposite Myles Garrett.
Yeah, that's a big upgrade over Jadeveon Clowney. And we know what Jadeveon Clowney means as far as a run-stopping defensive end. Khalil Mack, I mean, this guy just knows how to get to the passer. I mean, early on his career, 4 straight double-digit sack seasons. Not quite the same production as you would have not quite the same production now, but, then again, he is getting it older. He's going to turn 32 in a couple weeks. So it's a question of how much is left in the tank, but I imagine he could be a very good number 2 defensive end opposite Myles Garrett, especially, if Jim Schwartz brings this wide 9 into Cleveland. Khalil Mack, I think about 267 pounds, a great build for the wide 9. I don't know. Again, not going to have the same kind of juice as he had at the beginning of his career, but still probably very productive. I imagine he's the kind of player who can do pretty well in a number 2 role. It just comes down to money and how much the Browns can free up. And like, we were talking about earlier, how much they're going to put into the defensive tackle pool in free agency to try to free it up, because like you said, they don't need just one guy. I think they probably need 2 starters out of free agency at that position. If Mack's available and he's willing to come at a discount, you absolutely, if you're the Browns, you say yes to that every day.
Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Tim will talk a little bit about this year's wide receiver draft class. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, what's up? This Mandela calling out of Akron again. I know everybody wants us to fix the defensive line for sure, but I got 2 guys on the D-line and 2 receivers that I got in mind for sure. What y'all think about a D-tackle out of Baylor named Siaki Ika? Big guy, 6'4", 350, can fix all our needs we need in the middle. And then there's another guy named Gervin Dexter. He a big guy too. He ain't Siaka weight-wise, but he's taller for sure. Like, he remind me of Cam Hayward. And then for the wide receivers, we need a different receiver. We need somebody in the Anthony Shorts world that can get some yak. So I was thinking of Zay Flowers, Parker Washington, and I was thinking of Josh Downs. Either one of those guys with our receiving core is going to be beautiful. But, yeah, let me know what y'all think about the guys I just named off, and go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Tim, we talked a little bit about the D tackles. I like where he's going, big bodies, and I like where he's going yard after the catch, guys that can work in open space. Take us through some of the specifics. You mentioned Siaki Ika a little bit earlier from Baylor.
Yeah, Ika's, got more of a build, I think, for a 3-4 type 3-4 base right now, about 350 pounds. He's a guy though, I think, he could easily drop like maybe 15 to 20 pounds, fit kind of a 4-3 base, kind of, similar build to what Jordan Davis of the Eagles has. And if you're drafting Siaki Ika, you're getting him for that 2-down, run stopping threat. And I know, there's limited ceiling for those guys, but you do still need those guys. You need a guy who's going to plug up the middle. As we saw, that was the biggest weakness of the defensive front. You plug in Siaki Ika as a body type the Browns don't have at all in this defensive front. You plug him in, and he's a guy who can eat up some double teams and really just muddy up the middle of the line, which is one way to really slow down a rushing attack.
As far as the wide receivers, Flowers and Washington, I get the feeling that Flowers probably going to go in the second round. You keep hearing his name, and he may even climb as you get towards the combine.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I watched Zay Flowers highlights, I mean, this guy, he's just got such an explosive element. It's not just downfield speed. I mean, he was making moves on guys. Like, I'm gonna be so fascinated at the combine if he does the agility drills, the 3-cone, because I think he could put up some very good numbers, because not only is he able to get to run down the field very fast, but he could also create separation, make some moves. He gets the top speed very quickly. And like I said, his highlight reel might be one of the more fun highlight reels I've seen out of this receiver class. Maybe he's not even there for the Browns at 42 or 40 in their first round pick. I believe it's 42 when they're on the clock. Certainly, he could sneak in the first round if he really blows it up at the combine. Like, I certainly think he has the potential to do. And just because he was at Boston College, it's not as big a school as Penn State, Parker Washington, and North Carolina with Josh Downs, but Flowers put up some tremendous numbers despite being the guy that's circled and highlighted in every team scouting report. So I think that says something.
You also wrote about an article on this wide receiving class and why this receivers class in the draft is good news for the Browns. Take us through that.
Well, when you look at the Browns receiving group right now, what they have, obviously at the top, you have Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think it's pretty established that's your 1 and 2 right now. The thing that I think with the Browns need a receiver, they need a guy who's going to stretch the field. They need a guy who's going to be able to test safeties deep, kind of, force them to respect the deep ball more, and also be a guy who can be underneath to get yards after the catch. And I know Anthony Schwartz was kind of drafted to do that. He really hasn't been able to because, he was raw when he came in the NFL, and he's had some injury concerns, which, do worry me about his longevity. But when you look at this receiver class, what's one thing a lot of these guys share? They're slot receivers who can absolutely fly. And I mean, it seems like one after the other kind of rolled off an assembly line where they're similar traits. And I'm looking kind of after the top, outside the top guys. Jackson Smith-Njigba from Ohio State is not going to be there. Quentin Johnson from TCU, not going to be there. Jordan Addison from USC, probably not going to be there at 42. So then who's left after that? Well, after that, you've got a ton of guys who are all very similar. I spotlighted a handful. Kayshon Boutte from LSU, Josh Downs from North Carolina, who our caller was just talking about earlier, Zay Flowers, Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee, Marvin Mims from Oklahoma, Parker Washington as well from Penn State. A name I forgot to mention in that article that I probably should have, Tyler Scott from Cincinnati, is another name that seems like it's starting to pop of late. Got a chance to watch his highlights the other day. Very similar. And all these guys, they're 5'11" to 6 foot, maybe somewhere between 170 some pounds to about 200. I think Boutte is around 200. He might be the heaviest of the bunch, but they're all very similar. I mean, even in the scouting reports, there's a lot of similarities between all of these guys. So it just comes down to, I guess, how they test in the combine. And if you're the Browns, you're going to take 1 to 42. Which guy do you like the most? Which guy do you feel like is going to have the most kind of impact within this offense as far as, being that field stretching guy or that guy who's going to take a 2-yard gain and turn it into 20? Who you feel like's got the best chance to do that as quickly as possible?
All right, so this is going to take a look at the top cap hits for 2023. Dov Kleiman tweets this out. We always check in with him. Deshaun Watson, a $54.9 million cap hit for the Browns. Now, they're going to restructure and work that out because they need to get some more money to go out and do what they want to do. Eventually, those bills come due, though. You see the biggest cap hit 2024, the Saints with Michael Thomas, who hasn't been on the field, almost $60 million. But back to the point, that's a big cap number. Andrew Berry will extend it out. There'll be a signing bonus. He'll convert, and that will create some cap space. But eventually, you run up to a wall where you got to make some tough decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I was even just looking at it on overthecap.com. They restructure, according to them, with Deshaun Watson's contract. It suddenly turns into about almost $33.7 million in cap space freed up, and all of a sudden that cap hit becomes a lot less significant, and you free up a ton of salary space to make the kind of moves that the Browns might need to make to get the pieces Jim Schwartz needs on his defense. But yeah, like you said, those bills come due, and eventually, you know, if Deshaun Watson is the player that the Browns hope he is, I mean, he's going to be potentially Brown for the next decade or whatever, and those are problems you worry about maybe in 2029 or 2030 or whatever. You know, even though you're going to eventually have to pay those things, we also have to remember the salary cap's going to go up and up and up because of the new deal with Amazon Prime. I believe NFL Sunday Ticket now has a deal with YouTube TV. Those streaming deals, I think, should pump more into the salary cap. So, yes, this is a big cap hit, no question about it with Deshaun Watson. But as the joke around NFL Twitter is that the salary cap is a myth because of the numbers of ways it could be manipulated. And it would not shock me at all if they restructured Deshaun Watson just because, you know, they want to free up that space. You know, they could potentially restructure a number of guys to free up a ton of room. It's just about, you know, who's going to be willing to do that. And if, you know, the Browns are, like you said, willing to pay the price down the road, because, I mean, the Saints are the perfect example of what happens when those bills come due. I mean, almost $60 million cap hit for Michael Thomas.
Yep.
You know, if we're talking to Michael Thomas about 3 years ago, yeah, that would be a little more, little easier to swallow. But with how banged up he's been lately, that is a huge, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Hadn't been on the field in a couple of years consistently. The other thing is now those contracts have language where they don't really have an option to renegotiate. It's you convert it to a signing bonus. Nobody's losing any money. You're paying the money up front. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure there will be several of the Browns that do that because they need some cap space. Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Take a look at some free agent and trade scenarios for the Browns. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, guys. Love the show. Frequent listener and frequent caller. Couple quick questions. If we are changing to a pass-oriented offense, how is that going to affect a line that was brought in and trained to be a run-blocking line? Is Ethan Posick a good pass blocker? And second part, whatever happened to Will Fuller? I seem to have lost track of him. Thank you, guys, for listening.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Will Fuller remained unsigned. Understanding is he still wants to play, has not retired. It's an interesting question, though. Yes, they're going to have to learn to pass block. Bill Callahan's there, so that shouldn't be that big of a problem. And their run blocking will be different. They're not going to do the same wide scheme because Deshaun Watson's better out of a shotgun.
Yeah, probably more shotgun runs, more pistol runs in certain situations, maybe more RPOs or read options, all those sorts of different things. And I mean, that's going to be the adjustment that I think Kevin Stefanski and Bill Callahan are going to need to make, you know, in these next few months leading up to minicamp, because we also have to remember that the Deshaun Watson trade happened in March, so I'm sure they were preparing for one type of offense, you know, in the time before they were able to acquire Watson, and then knowing he's not going to play a whole season, you have to kind of try and create two separate schemes, one without Deshaun Watson and one with Deshaun Watson, and we saw just how much of a tough time it seemed like the entire offense had moving from the Brissett scheme to the Watson scheme, and the problems that kind of created. But now you have Deshaun Watson, who's unquestionably your guy. Right now looking to play all 17 games of the season. That means you have time to kind of, prepare everything, restructure how you train your offensive linemen in mini camp, OTAs, training camp, kind of get them ready to work on more of a pass blocking type of setup, where they're going to have to pass protect more than they have in the past couple of seasons, where they're going to have to learn how to be better, blocking in shotgun situations, maybe when there's no tight end on the field. So that's going to be, a few months process, but they've already kind of gotten a head start because they've seen Deshaun Watson for 6 games. They have a better idea of what he likes, as far as, what kind of plays he likes to run, what kind of the scheme is supposed to look like, and also what they need out of their offensive linemen. So it all goes to, building the best offense I think the Browns can, or that they think they can build to make Deshaun Watson as successful as possible, because the better Deshaun Watson looks, the better the team is going to look. It's obvious, it's pretty obvious, but it's true that your team in the NFL goes as far as your quarterback goes.
Yeah, if you're paying a guy, you saw the cap hit last segment. Cap hit's $54 million. You better figure out how to make him look good. This is interesting. So this is from Brad Stainbrook from the Orange and Brown Report. Again, a good follow on Twitter. If you don't follow him, you should. Eagles left tackle Andre Dillard will become a free agent in the offseason. League source tells Orange and Brown Report.com they wouldn't be surprised if Cleveland is interested. Dillard has flexibility. Went in for injured left guard Landon Dickerson in the AFC Championship game. One league source told the Orange and Brown Report the expectation is that Dillard would receive a contract in the $9 to $11.5 million range. Tim, the only thing I'd say, they got a lot of money tied up in the offensive line between Conklin, Teller, Bitonio, Jedrick Wills. I would assume if you're talking about signing Dillard, you don't pick up that fifth-year option for Jedrick Wills that's going to be in the neighborhood of $14.5 million.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking, that money, I said $14.5 million, combine it with, the $11.5 million, that's at the upper range that, Brad's referencing in that article. You're talking $26 million potentially tied up in trying to figure out who your starting left tackle is. And I know there's still questions about Jedrick Wills, and I guess to an extent, if you're still having questions about Jedrick Wills after 3 seasons, there's a question of, whether or not he actually is the guy. You're still uncertain about that, but Dillard, has been a solid player for his career, just obviously beaten out at left tackle by, I believe it's Jordan Mailata, who was a 7th-round pick, who's developed really well and become a surprise key player in that Eagles front. But, Andre Dillard was a guy I really liked coming out of the draft in 2019, very athletically gifted, didn't have quite the career he's expected to have in the NFL, but if the Browns, for whatever reason, decide to move on from Jedrick Wills or decide he's not the guy, Dillard would be an interesting possibility, especially, if you could bring him in for even cheaper, maybe as a swing tackle. Like he said, if Chris Hubbard doesn't come back, you kind of need that swing tackle. And if you don't feel comfortable with that being James Hudson, maybe you give Andre Dillard a look, but it has to be, I think, at a lower price.
All right. This 2023 free agent contract projections for linebackers. And there's some interesting ones. So you got Leighton Vander Esch, Cowboys. They say 2 years, $14 million. Deion Jones, who was with the Browns, played okay at the end of the year. 1 year, $6 million. Anthony Walker, 1 year, $5 million. And Bobby Okwirique, 1 year, $4 million. When you look at it, assuming Anthony Walker is ready to go, and we don't know, it's a quad injury is pretty serious. Would you do the 1 year, $5 million, or does Vander Esch or somebody else interest you even more?
I'd probably stick with Deion Jones. I mean, there was enough we saw to Deion Jones, at the end of the season, once he got more comfortable with this defense and, the different things he does, that I think, I'd be more inclined to kind of keep him around, because I think he brings a little more than more than Anthony Walker does, especially, when it comes to being, a coverage linebacker. I think where the concern is going to be at the position is, what they do with, obviously Sione Takitaki and, him coming off a torn ACL. Obviously, he's not going to play for a good portion of this upcoming season as he continues to recover from that. So I would at least bring one of those guys back, maybe both, potentially, depending on how Anthony Walker's rehab is going. Just keeping veteran guys at that position is important. And, if you have good defensive tackles, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, if you're good up the middle defensively, it makes those linebackers look better because they're not having to continuously try to shed blocks from those offensive linemen, every single time. If they're able to kind of run free, shoot gaps, and make plays, it makes them look better. So it's those resources you got to put up in the front, because that's where great defensive play starts usually, is that defensive line.
Tim Bielik, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
You got it. Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
All right, Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out. Pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We're going to take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, Jacob Roach from brownswire.com, co-host of Barking Browns Show, will join us. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, my name is Spencer Hennigan. I'm from Cincinnati, but I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. And I was wondering what you guys think about Ivan Pace Jr. He was the national team in the Senior Bowl defensive MVP. I was wondering what he could do in the linebacker group in the rookie class this year. I was wondering if he would be a good fit with the Browns, if you guys think that. And, yeah, go Browns. Let me know.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Jacob Roach from brownswire.com, as well as co-host of the Barking Browns show. Jacob, he's a little undersized. Having said that, he plays downhill and he hits. And before he played at Cincinnati, he was at Miami of Ohio, and he tied an NCAA record with 7 sacks in a game. And he did it on 18 snaps. It's one of the most bizarre stat lines I have ever seen. Literally, 18 snaps, 7 sacks. I think he fits in an NFL scheme somewhere. I'm not sure it's the Browns. We've seen the undersized linebackers. If you get bigger D tackles, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds like a stat that I used to get when I put Madden on rookie mode, and then you just blitz the whole time. It's ridiculous. Ivan Pace plays with his hair on fire, man. Like, this dude, he's not a freak level athlete. He is a little bit smaller, but he had over 100 tackles this year for Cincinnati, over 100 tackles with Miami, Ohio before that. Again, just like you said, it's the size. I'm not sure it works here for what they need. But if you're looking for a depth player that can just play with really smart football IQ and he diagnoses what happens in front of him quickly, then you can take a chance on Ivan Pace maybe on day 3. I don't think he would start in Cleveland, but I think he can make some nice depth.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. The knock on him is his size. And I've been around long enough to know that was the knock on a guy named London Fletcher, who played 12, 13 years in the league. Same thing with Derek Brooks, who's in the Hall of Fame. So guys that size can play the position. I have no idea if Ivan Pace is one of them, but he might be. I know you also wrote an article about this. Jesse Bates. Do you think he could end up coming to the Browns?
If John Johnson's gone, yeah, I do think so. Because if you look at PFF did, their top 100 free agents, and they put some contracts, like what they think the contracts will look like. And Jesse Bates, the numbers are very similar to what you would save if you cut John Johnson. And to be honest with you, it makes a lot of sense. This team has not had a true deep free safety, a coverage safety, since Kevin Stefanski has been there, and they tried to make John Johnson that, and it hasn't worked. Well, now you got Grant Delpit emerging as a box safety that can do the things that John Johnson can, and then you just stick, a guy like Jesse Bates, who's one of the best coverage safeties in the NFL, on the back end there. There's some Bengals people that said it's really realistic that the Browns could sweep in and take Jesse Bates away from him, and that would just be, if you're looking for home run hits in free agency, that's the one right there.
Yeah, you weaken a division opponent that you're trying to catch, and you strengthen your one of your weak positions. All right, I also know you've addressed this. Top free agent targets for the Browns next month. Who do you think they should be going after to get this defense and, offense where it needs to be?
Well, give me someone that their weight at defensive tackle starts with a 3. Give me one of those and stick them there in the middle. The 2 guys I got top of my list is Sheldon Rankins and Dalvin Tomlinson from the Jets, and then from the Vikings, formerly of the Giants, for Tomlinson. Tomlinson's probably my number 1 for the Browns. I don't think either one of these guys are going to be exceptionally expensive. They're not going to be Deron Payne, who I would love, but is probably going to get $20 million this year in the market, if he even hits the market. Tomlinson's 325 pounds, and I actually think he's a better pass rusher than he is run defender, which is just insane to me that he moves the way he does at that size. It's a freak level of athlete right there. And you're talking about a guy who's still graded in the mid 60s as a run blocker, as a run defender, which is astronomically better, I think, than anybody in Cleveland did in that defensive tackle room against the run. So you find one of those guys, the Sheldon Rankins, a 315-pound guy, or Tomlinson, to stick in the middle of there. And then, you're talking about wide receiver. I would love a reunion, bring the Ohio State guy home, and Paris Campbell if he gets free. There's a guy that can line up in the slot and can stretch the field vertically and really challenge defenses in a way that the Browns offense just hasn't been able to do the last handful of years. And I think the Browns have got to have a field stretcher if they really want to unlock this offense with Deshaun Watson. I think Paris Campbell is probably that guy. Maybe Sterling Shepard, if you're not as worried about his injury history. Coming from New York, he's coming off a major injury there. And then maybe one more Brown I'll throw in there, Jordan Poyer, the safety from Buffalo, who is projected to only get like $8.5 million a year, and he is another one of the best coverage safeties in the NFL. And you could actually cut John Johnson, save nearly $10 million, and then sign Poyer for 8.5, and that's a heck of a better defense right there.
Yeah, and I'm with you on Campbell. I like the fact that it's not only vertically stretching it, but horizontally. Make a defense defend the entire field is what you want to do with Deshaun Watson as your quarterback. With any quarterback, but it will unlock Deshaun Watson. All right, before we go to break, 5th-year option on Jedrick Wills. What are you thinking with that? That has got to be one that the Browns are. It's got to be that's a tough call.
Yeah, I think the last couple ones, because of the way Baker Mayfield, and ultimately it didn't work with Baker, but when the decision for Baker and Denzel came up, those were easy decisions. You picked up the 5th-year option. One of them worked out, one of them didn't. That's how it works. But I wrote this article about this last night, talking about what his price tag would be once they release that. And I really had trouble going back and forth. But in the end, that $14 million that he would make, if he signed that right now and he was making $14 million, he'd be the 16th highest paid left tackle. So you got to ask yourself, do you think he's somewhere around average? Because I tend to think that's true. So if you think he's around average, then that makes sense. And I mean, this guy has got boatloads of talent at the position. There's just some questions about his motor and his desire to be out there at times. But you still got to think, what are you going to replace him with? Is there a clear and better upgrade, especially without a first-round pick? Maybe not right now. So it's going to be tough to see that number when you put it into perspective and you think about what he still can be at only 23 years old. You know, you remember some things like that, and you look at some of these other players that have blossomed in their 4th and 5th years in similar positions. And I think that they should pick it up. I think it's a little bit risky, but I'm higher on Jed than I think a lot of people are. Yeah, I'm with you. I think, unfortunately for him, he's compared to this mythical 10th pick in the draft, and he hasn't lived up to that. He just hasn't. But he hasn't been one of the worst left tackles in the league either, I don't think. Jacob Roach and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we talk a little bit more about some young guys that are draft eligible that the Browns might be looking at. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Jacob Roach from BrownsWire.com, as well as co-host of the Barking Browns show. Jacob, I know you've done a story on a guy that you think is an ideal pairing for Myles Garrett, an edge rusher from Auburn. Take us through that, what you see, what you like about him.
Yeah, Auburn's Derek Hall. I keep wanting to call him Derek Hill all the time. I don't know why I do that. But he is one of the most explosive linemen I've watched in this draft class in terms of his get off. I mean, there's a couple of plays here, and you'll see it coming up here in a second, where he literally blows right by the tackle, and they don't even get their hands on him. And even when in this situation they get their hands on him, they're pulling him. He's got this strength at 250 pounds that sometimes he has a devastating style of bull rush with them. And it's just, when I think about the fact that you can't double a guy like this in Derek Hall because you have Myles Garrett on the other side, it just makes me think, like, okay, there's an ideal pairing, because this guy gets on you in a hurry, doesn't allow you to think very well. He's not the greatest athlete in the world in terms of bend around the corner. But he has great strength, a great combination of strength, and he just needs to work on his refinement, on his technique. He has really long arms, but he doesn't really keep the offensive lineman, out of his frame from time to time. But I think a guy like Jim Schwartz can go and do for Derek Hall what Bill Callahan has done for guys like, Ethan Posick and Wyatt Teller. I think Schwartz can be that kind of guru. And he has this size-speed combination that I think, once it's all put together and he gets more fundamentally sound, that he can just be, a 8 to 10 sacks a year opposite Myles Garrett. And he's a guy that some teams want to double team, but will never be able to. And I just think the bursts off the line of scrimmage is some of the best I've seen in this draft class. And it's just a lot of really fun tape. And the dude can play coverage too. He drops into coverage and covers relatively well, which is just insane. And his best reps from the stand-up outside linebacker position that Jim Schwartz covets.
Yeah, the thing is you saw that he's lining up wide, and that quick speed will help him get the edge in the what we are assuming will be a wide 9 that Jim Schwartz usually plays. Another guy that you took a look at, Keanu Benton, and you're kind of thinking run defense with him, a guy from Wisconsin that played pretty well at the Senior Bowl as well.
Yeah, had a great Senior Bowl after some really nice tape. And you're looking at 317 pounds of a dude that's just, hey, here's an immovable force. Try to get past him. Keanu Benton he's what you need in run defense. He's got this little, you can see him here, 2 blocks. He's just pushing through. And it's ridiculous that they don't move him very much. Even when there's 2 of them there, he's just got this, he plays with good leverage, good strength. And then he scares you every once in a while with some explosion off the line of scrimmage with a little swim move. And he gets into the backfield and you're like, wait, that dude, like we did right there, just a little, just pushed him off to the side at 317 pounds and he's in the backfield. He just doesn't have a great plan, I think, as a pass rusher. He's just not, again, another guy that I don't think is technically sound yet. But he is going to absorb double teams. He is going to keep Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and Anthony Walker if they re-sign him. Those linebackers are going to stay clean because Keanu Benton just doesn't give up a lot of ground. He's what the Browns thought Andrew Billings would be when they signed him in 2020, and then eventually he, of course, sat that year out. But he sets the foundation. He anchors the middle. He played a lot of nose tackle, but I think he's a better 3-tech, and you saw that at the Senior Bowl where you're not moving him. You may move him 2 yards, but he's going to be in there. He's going to push the pocket in the pass rush game. He's not a 3-down lineman yet, but I think he's one of the best defensive tackles against the run this year, not named Mozzie Smith and Siaki Ika. But after those 2, Keanu Benton in the 3rd round, I think, is an immediate massive upgrade for that room.
All right, before we go to break, let's take a look. 5 players who saw their Senior Bowl stock rise after a week at the Senior Bowl. This, again, from one of your articles. First guy we've already talked about, so Keanu Benton. We just talked about him from Wisconsin. Second guy, another Big Ten guy that kind of has been linked to the Browns some, is Adibare from Northwestern, another Big Ten guy. Now, a wide receiver that you keep hearing a little bit about, Nathaniel Dell from Houston. Running back, I'm intrigued by this guy, Tajay Spears. I saw him play in the bowl game against Southern Cal, and he is just fast. Cody Mock, offensive lineman from North Dakota State. So we already talked about Benton. Adibare and Dell are guys at position of need. What do you see from them?
Yeah, Adibare, I was told by Jeff Risdon, who was at the Senior Bowl, they just called him Northwestern 96 so that they made sure they pronounced it correctly. This guy is fundamentally sound. That's what you're looking at, a guy like this. He's got a devastating bull rush. This is one of the strongest linemen in the class from the outside edge rusher position. He just plays with tremendous leverage. He understands how to get under an offensive lineman's pads, where his hand placement needs to be, and he knows how to use the strength and the strong base that he has. And it's just, if you go back and you watch some of these clips from the Senior Bowl, he's just pushing dudes into quarterbacks' laps in the pass rush game. In run defense, he's doing a lot of the same things where he's not necessarily making the plays as much as he's just being in the way and doing the dirty work, which is similar to what Keanu Benton does in the run game. Is these things might not show up in the stat sheet, but when you watch them on film, you're like, okay, this guy understands what his role is, and he might not be making these glamorous sacks or tackles, but he is the guy that can play tremendous against the run. But Adibare, he can rush the passer. He's just kind of a stiff athlete, so he doesn't have that explosion and bend around the edge. But he's as technically sound of a player that you're going to find, I think, in outside of the first round in this draft class. And I think he just uses that to his, advantage. Now, Tank Dell, the thing about him is he's very undersized. That he's hovering around 160 pounds, and you're talking about a guy that Jeff Risdon, again, told me at the Senior Bowl that, this is a guy that does not have a very big catch radius. He has short arms. He's really small and undersized, but it's clear what he can do in the open field. It reminds you of Tutu Atwell or even JoJo Natson, a much smaller guy. But if you put him out there and get the ball laterally and vertically, like, we talked about that with horizontally with Paris Campbell, I think he's the same style of player. You just worry that he is incredibly small and he's already 23 years old. But if that has him tumbling to like round 6 or something like that, you're not going to find a more polished player than Tank Dell on day 3 at the position. And if you've already addressed it in free agency, you could take a flyer on a guy like that.
Jacob Roach and I are going to step aside, take one more timeout. Other side of the break, we'll continue talking a little Browns. Also, we'll talk some LeBron James, the new career scoring leader in the NBA, broke the record last night. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to Go Forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jacob Roach from BrownsWire.com, co-host of the Barking Browns show as well. Jacob did a 7-round mock draft. So round 2, you've got Cansey, defensive tackle from Pittsburgh. What do you like about him? What does he bring?
He's a ferocious pass rusher. He's just absolutely relentless. Again, one of these guys that just – ball is snapped and you would have thought he knew the snap count. He's that explosive off the line of scrimmage, and he knows how. He's a gap penetrator. He understands how to read the body language and what the offensive linemen are going to do, and he often shoots the gap the opposite way in which they're moving and that sort of thing, and he gets back there in an absolute hurry. He's undersized at 280 pounds, but he doesn't play 280 pounds. He's got a lot of strength and leverage that he utilizes to go with that athleticism. He's a guy I've seen some people mock. I saw Mel Kiper mock him at number 10. So, I mean, this is a guy that at least other talent evaluators are looking at it and say, yeah, he's undersized, but the talent kind of outweighs the traditional measurables, and the production is there from Pitt. That, this is a guy that you put him in there in this modern passing league, and he's instantly a starter in terms of pass rush situations. And I think he's better against the run than some people give him credit for.
All right, round 3, pick 98. You have the Browns going with a safety, J.L. Skinner, from Boise State. What does he bring to the table that you think Browns could go after him in the 3rd round?
Size and physicality. I mean, he plays the deep free safety position, but he looks like a linebacker. He was standing next to some linebackers in Mobile, and it reminds me of when I got to see Martin Emerson in person during Browns camp last year, and I was blown away by how big Martin Emerson was. Like, I knew he was big and long and that sort of thing, but you didn't compare him to linebackers. Skinner's the same way. He's a big physical safety who has better speed and athleticism than you would think from a guy of that size. He's going to hit. He's going to come downhill in a hurry, and he's going to hit you in the mouth. He likes to be physical, but he also doesn't draw a lot of unnecessary penalties for being physical, because sometimes you can see that with defensive backs where you're like, this guy, he plays well and he's going to hit you, but he's going to draw a bunch of flags. I don't think he really does that all that much, but he's a really good coverage safety. He needs some work. He's not a finished product by any stretch of the imagination, but he's got all the tools there to be a really good starter in the back end of the defense. In the 4th round, you have the Browns taking an edge rusher. We've already talked about him, Adibare from Northwestern. And defense, you get tackle, a safety, and a edge rusher in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th rounds for the Browns. All right, let's change topics just a little bit before I let you go. You also wrote an article, Keenan Allen, a guy that could be a salary cap casualty with the Chargers. Do you think he's an option for the Browns? Do you think he fits? there would have to be somebody in that room that leaves if they were going to bring him in, just because he just doesn't do what they need. They need to get vertical in a hurry. He plays out of the slot. He had a pretty good year this year. I was actually surprised he had 766 yards with all the injuries. I didn't know that he had gotten him enough time to get up there. He's a really good player. I just don't see it working in Cleveland. Very similar to Allen Robinson last year, was like, yeah, good player. I think he's got plenty left on the tire. He just doesn't do what the Browns need him to do. And for that reason, I don't think they'll sniff the tires on there. Yeah,
I would tend to agree with you. The people that argue you never can have enough guys, but I agree with you. I don't think the skill set fits. It's redundant. I think he does some things that Amari Cooper does. Jacob Roach, as always, great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Jacob.
Appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
You too, Jacob Roach. Make sure you check him out. Brownswire.com, also co-host of the Barking Browns Show. Some history out on the West Coast late last night, early this morning. Akron's own LeBron James, with his fadeaway jumper, becomes the all-time leading scorer in NBA history, surpassing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who you see right there, to earn as the career scoring leader in all of NBA history. Well, before he was the all-time leading scorer in NBA history, before he was the king, heck, before he was even the chosen one on the cover of Sports Illustrated as a senior in high school, he was just LeBron James, 9th grader at St. Vincent-St. Mary.
It's been a perfect season for the St. Vincent-St. Mary Fighting Irish. Undefeated, nationally ranked, and in the Division III State Final Four. A key reason is the outstanding efforts of 6'5" freshman LeBron James.
LeBron is a multifaceted player. The best thing about him, I think, is he just has great instincts for the game. He can really pass the ball, and he does a lot of things well.
It feels good to be a freshman coming in here and playing real good. Everybody, they just accepted who I am and what I can do. They want the ball in me, Ali, and Mav's hand in the clutch.
LeBron has been so good, he leads the Irish in every offensive category, averaging over 18 points, 6 assists, and 8 rebounds a game. It's rare when a freshman has any impact on a varsity team. But LeBron isn't just any freshman.
I just wanted to play good team ball. I really didn't care about my stats. As long as we was winning.
He has unlimited potential because he has the ability to learn. He knows what his weaknesses are, and I think anytime you know your strengths and your weaknesses and you have that ability to learn and understand that, you have a chance really to be a great player.
On the football field, LeBron also excelled for the Irish. He teamed up with Maverick Carter at wide receiver to form one of the area's most formidable duos catching the football. They helped the Irish qualify in the Division III state playoffs.
He started for us the last half of the season. He was as good as our senior receivers, if not better. He gets to the ball, which is amazing. On some of the catches he makes, he just goes and gets it.
I've been playing football since I was 9 and basketball. I just started playing sports since I was 9. And I've been liking football as much as basketball. I just want to keep playing all through my high school career and just play to my capability.
Despite being an underclassman, LeBron leads by example, not only athletically, but in the classroom as well. He carries above a 3.3 grade point average. Both on and off the court, the sky really is the limit for LeBron's accomplishments over the next 4 years.
He's really a fantastic person. He's a great kid. He enjoys just life in general.
He's very, very team-oriented. He's very well liked at the school. He's got a bubbly personality. He's just been a pleasure to be around.
I want to be a role model. I want people, like when I get older, I want little kids to look up to me too, like they do in the pros. I like just to be who I am and just be friends with everybody and just help people who need help.
LeBron James, as a 9th grader, achieved that goal and then some. Definitely a role model. His I Promise School, LeBron Family Foundation have done great things in the city of Akron. Never forgot he's just a kid from Akron. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.